All right, we've got Facebook up and running. All right, and I have that it is right at 12:15, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So once again, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Complaints 101, How to Resolve Disputes in the Special Education Process. We're so glad to have you join us today. So my name is Stephanie McLaughlin, and I am the Training and Evaluation Specialist with Partners Resource Network. Partners Resource Network is the nonprofit agency that operates the Texas statewide network of parent training and information centers. We are funded through the Department of Education Office of Special Education Programs. Throughout Texas, there are 4 projects known as PACT, PACT, and TEAM. Our mission at Partners Resource Network is to empower and support Texas families and individuals impacted by disabilities or special healthcare needs. Also joining us today from Partners Resource Network is our Director of Statewide Services, Christina Henning, our Support Specialist, Chelsea Rivas, and our Technology Specialist, Zach Hidalgo. If you're having any technical difficulties, please reach out to Zach in the chat box, and he will assist you with those difficulties. For those of you that are needing a certificate of attendance, you will be receiving an email to thank you for attending today's webinar. If you'll follow the link in the email, you can get your certificate of attendance. At the end of our presentation today, we will have a time for question and answers. So if you're joining us on Zoom today, please type your questions in the Q&A box. And if you're joining us on Facebook, you can type your questions in the comments and we'll get those. We are recording today's webinar, and the recording will be available on our website at prntexas.org and also on our Facebook page. So without further ado, let's get turned over to our speaker and let her share her wealth of information with you. Today's guest speaker is Tabitha Dwyer. Tabitha is part of the education team at Disability Rights Texas as a legal fellow for the Equal Justice Works. Her fellowship focuses on the representation of students with disabilities who have been unfairly or illegally disciplined in rural North and West Texas schools. She graduated with her Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Angelo State University before earning her JD at Texas Tech University School of Law. While at Texas Tech, Tabitha was a teaching fellow for first-year students, a research assistant, and the managing editor of the Texas Tech Law Review. She also represented clients in Texas Tech's Civil Practice Clinic. During her time as a law student, Tabitha wrote an article on Texas's laws affecting drivers with disabilities, which was published in 2020. Finally, Tabitha is the younger sister of a former special education student. Tabitha, welcome. I'm going to stop sharing and allow you to share your screen, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. Okay, let's go ahead and get let's see here. Okay, I'm getting a message that I don't have screen sharing abilities.
You do now. I just gave it to you. Sorry.
Beautiful. I'm so sorry. Okay, here. Let's see. Okay. We're going to start this. And we're going to go ahead. Here, let's see if we can get our other screen here. That way y'all don't have to deal with my notes. Okay. Seems like that's good. All right. Well, thank you all for taking some time out of your Tuesdays to hang out with me a little bit. We're going to talk about some of the basics of complaints and the special education process. We're also going to talk a little bit about other dispute resolution processes. So stick around. Before we kind of get into today's topic, I wanted to tell y'all a little bit more about Disability Rights Texas, the organization that I work at. We are part of the National Protection and Advocacy System. Every state in the country has a P&A authority, so Disability Rights Texas is the one for Texas. That makes us a little unique from other disability rights organizations in the state because we actually get to monitor facilities and other places that home or serve people with disabilities. We make sure everybody's crossing their T's and dotting their I's, and we've been doing that since 1977. We are a nonprofit legal firm, so we provide legal assistance to our clients at no cost to them. And we do so across a wide variety of kind of subject matter teams. You're hearing from a small part of us today, the education team. And so we do lots of different kinds of work, but we are all working towards the protection and advocacy of the rights of Texans with disabilities and ensuring their equal participation in society. So we get to work with Texans of all ages with a wide variety of disabilities. And here's a little bit more of the specifics of what we do. Of course, as a legal firm, we provide direct legal assistance. We have policy specialists who spend a lot of their time in Austin meeting with legislators and educating them on how certain issues impact people with disabilities. Of course, we love to educate. That's kind of why I'm hanging out with you all today. We love to educate people with disabilities and their family members about their rights, what they're entitled to. And of course, if there's something that we don't do or can't help with, we make sure to get people to the programs and services that can help them. So that's a little bit about us. Let's get into the exciting stuff. Here's the big picture of what we are going to talk about today. I wanted to tell you all a little bit about the common concerns that we hear about on the education team from parents, those common areas of disagreement. Of course, we're going to talk about what to do when those disagreements happen. We're going to kind of talk about those in 3 different levels. So we're going to talk about art facilitation and mediation. We're going to talk about TEA and OCR complaints. And we're going to talk about big bad due process hearings. And then after we get some of those basics down, we're going to zoom back in specifically on TEA complaints, how to write them, how to file them. And of course, if you're going to file a TEA complaint, I think you should know what to expect after that. I think that's something that we don't talk about quite enough. And then, of course, if you want more information about what we talked about today, or if maybe you had some questions that I didn't get to answer, I'll send y'all off with some additional resources. So, feels like a lot. Hopefully, once we get into it, it won't be quite as much as it seems. But let's go ahead and start with the very first thing on the agenda, common areas of disagreement. So these are kind of the 5 top things that we hear from parents, the concerns that we hear kind of day in and day out. The first one is participation in ARD meetings. It's easy to kind of feel that in an ARD meeting, there's a little bit of a power imbalance. It's easy for parents to feel kind of outnumbered. You know, as a parent, you're sitting on one side of the table, and then on the other side of the table, you'll have district and campus members of the ARD committee. So parents can feel like they're not heard, right? Their input, their opinions aren't valued, which isn't always true, but it's easy to feel that way. So we hear concerns about participation. Of course, we unfortunately hear lots of things about student discipline. We know that some of our kiddos have some behavioral challenges. So we hear about students being suspended or expelled or sent to alternative campuses. And we also hear about things like restraints or seclusion or timeout. We also hear concerns about inclusion. If you are a parent of a kiddo in special education, you might have heard the phrase least restrictive environment, LRE. That's the right of students with disabilities to be educated alongside their non-disabled peers to whatever extent is possible for that kiddo. We hear from parents that their students might be in a little bit more restrictive environment than is appropriate for them. So inclusion is the idea that those kiddos get to be alongside their peers. We also hear a lot about student progress. And interestingly, we actually hear kind of both sides of this coin. We hear parents who are told, hey, you know, your kid is doing great. They're progressing towards their goals. They're learning a lot. And sometimes parents aren't seeing that progress at home, or they're not seeing those report cards. And then we also have parents we hear from, you know, they're being told, hey, we need to adjust things because students not quite getting there. They need some extra help. But parents feel like their kiddo is learning, that they are benefiting from that environment or instruction or service. So we hear both sides of that coin. And then this last one here, IEP implementation, that is a really big umbrella. Of course, IEP, that's individualized education program. Every student in special education has a program. And if something is not being implemented correctly, that means that there's something written down in that program that either isn't happening or isn't happening the way that it is written down to happen, right? So I kind of wanted to include all of these things and touch on this for a moment, because I also think it's really easy for parents to feel like I'm the only person in the whole world who is dealing with this, who is going through this. You're not alone. These are things that we hear about all the time, every day. That's why the education team exists. So maybe a little bit of peace of mind. Okay, so before we get right into dispute resolution, I wanted to give y'all some kind of practical on the ground tips, good practices, things you can do to, one, prevent disagreements from happening if they are preventable, and two, kind of always be ready if you decide, okay, I am going to go file a complaint or do this other dispute resolution method. You're already kind of prepared. This first one here sounds really easy. It can be hard. Ask questions. Special education is super technical. There's a lot of hard language. I mean, I've probably used half a dozen acronyms with y'all in the 10 minutes we've been sitting here hanging out. If there's something that is being discussed that you don't understand or the data doesn't make sense, ask. And remember that it is actually the district's and the campus's responsibility to make sure you do understand what's going on and what is being discussed, because that's important to your right to participate, right? How do you contribute and help make decisions as a member of the committee if you don't have the information that you need, right? So ask those questions. The second thing also seems easy, can be hard. If you don't agree, say so. It might be that you have a reason for disagreeing, a concern that nobody in the committee has thought about yet. So if you have a concern or you don't agree, speak up. Be prepared to sort of give that point of view, because as a parent, you have that unique point of view that nobody else in the committee has. Of course, if you don't agree, on top of speaking up, sign to that effect. When you sign that IEP at the end of the ARD meeting, you have the opportunity to sign that you don't agree. Even if you agree with 9 out of the 10 changes that are made, if you don't agree with that last thing, sign that you don't agree. It can even be that maybe you don't agree with the procedures, kind of how the meeting was ran. Sign that you don't agree. And that goes right into creating a paper trail. If you ever make a request, do so in an email or in a letter. Whatever approval or denial you get of that request, ask that it be given to you in an email or a letter. Ask for and keep copies of everything. Being the parent of a special education kiddo is going to feel like an office job. Have a drawer or a file cabinet where you can keep those things. Some of the important things that you probably want to keep copies of is, of course, your students' kind of most recent IEP. That way you know on a day-to-day what they're supposed to be getting. And things like evaluations, these are things you might want to refer to later. This last one is awkward. If you have a conversation with somebody in person or over the phone, that's okay. Those don't have to stop completely. But turn it into an email. Email the person that you spoke with. Say, today you and I met, talked at this time, this place, this is what we talked about, this is what you told me. And if you don't, even if you don't get an email back, you've created a record. If nobody disputes, hey, we didn't talk about that, then that's what happened, and you have a record of it. So just make sure that you're creating that paper trail. Good practice. Okay, so let's hop into the exciting things. These are kind of going to be your level 1 remedies, and I call these the level 1 remedies not because they're necessarily the easiest, they're kind of the least contentious, right? These are things you can do to kind of keep the conversation in the ARD committee itself. With both of these things, you're kind of bringing in a third person to see if they can't help find some middle ground and to see if you can't come to an agreement. So let's start with ARD facilitation. An ARD facilitator is kind of going to be focused on 3 different things. 1, making sure that communication doesn't break down. Sometimes we have bad days and ARD meetings turn into arguments, right? That's okay. An ARD facilitator makes sure that communication keeps moving forward. We're staying positive, we're staying productive. Facilitators also help with focus. You know, are we really even sure what the issue is? Once we get down to that issue, let's make sure we're hearing everybody's suggestions as to how to tackle that issue. So maintaining that focus. And also procedure. If you have an ARD facilitator, you're probably going to notice that they are the ones writing up deliberations. They're the ones doing introductions. They're making sure that assurances are read, things like that. So ARD facilitators make sure that everything goes as smoothly as it can. How do you do this? Really simple. Ask the district to invite one. It could be the person that sends you the ARD invitation, you know, whoever you usually have contact with as far as ARD meetings, that's going to be the person you can email. When I tell you to communicate with somebody, do it in an email and ask the district to invite a facilitator. Caveat here, remember, facilitators are not always independent. And when I say that, I mean that it might be somebody you know. It's probably going to be somebody who is employed by the district. So if you are kind of at a point with your kiddo's school that maybe that relationship has broken down, there's not a lot of trust there, it happens. Mediation might be a little bit of a better route for you. Mediation is kind of the same idea. You're bringing a third person in, but this person is an impartial third party, meaning that they're not associated with the district, they're not employed by the district, they're not paid by the district. Mediators are actually private attorneys that work with the TEA. You can find all the information on those mediators on the TEA's website. TEA, Texas Education Agency. The TEA has a request form that is available on their website to request a mediator. You fill out that form, send it off, and the TEA kind of facilitates that for y'all. Another really great thing is that it's totally free. You don't have to pay for it, and the district doesn't have to pay for it. Caveat with this one, both parties have to agree. That means if you were the one as the parent requesting mediation, the TEA is going to reach out to the district. They're going to ask, hey, do you want to do mediation? And the district has to agree. Same thing, district requests mediation, TEA is going to reach out to you and you have to agree. So mediation will never be forced on anybody. But these are your level 1 remedies, keeping it in the ARD committee. Let's talk about those level 2 remedies a little bit. Your level 2 remedies are going to be your written complaints. These are level 2, kind of a step above our level 1, because you're kind of taking this issue or this decision out of the ARD committee and you're putting it into the hands of the investigating agency. So let's start with TEA complaints. These are going to be written complaints to the Texas Education Agency. When I say written, I do mean written. You can call up the TEA, tell them what's going on, and they'll go, oh, that's terrible, but they won't investigate unless you give them something written. There is a time frame that you want to always kind of keep your eye out on. You have to file a complaint within a year of the bad thing happening, right? Now, there's kind of a nuance with that. Let's say you have an ongoing issue, something that started a year and 6 months ago, right? Just because it started happening over a year ago, that doesn't take it out of the TEA's authority to investigate. So, for example, if your student is supposed to be getting speech services and they haven't for a year and a half, That doesn't get cut off after a year, just because, you know, we have this time frame. That's something that the TEA could still investigate. But good rule of thumb to remember, 1 year. And the TEA has 60 days to investigate that complaint. OCR complaints are, again, written complaints. Those go to the Office of Civil Rights, the OCR. These have a much shorter time frame. You're looking at 180 days, which flies by. And there isn't a time frame that the OCR has to get that investigation done. Now, those of us on the education team at Disability Rights Texas, we know that no time frame means no time frame. They take a while. So just something to keep in mind. Now, you're probably sitting here thinking to yourselves, why would I ever file a complaint with the OCR if I don't have as much time to do it? And who knows if I'll ever hear from them again, right? There are times that an OCR might be the appropriate sort of remedy for you. Let's talk about that. There's kind of 2 rules of thumb, 2 questions you can ask yourself to figure out, okay, should I be filing a TEA complaint or should I be filing an OCR complaint? The first thing you want to ask yourself is, what services does your student receive? If your student is receiving 504 services, you know, they have a 504 student services plan, that's going to mean that an OCR complaint is probably going to be the remedy that is available to you. If your kiddo is in special education and they have that IEP, a TEA complaint is probably going to be the best remedy available to you. The second question you can ask yourself to sort of figure out what should I be filing is, what has gone wrong? If your student has been discriminated against, you know, that means they're being treated differently or worse because of their disability. That's going to be something that the Office of Civil Rights investigates. They investigate claims of discrimination. So that's going to be the remedy available to you. Now, if it's something that has a basis more in education, there's something going wrong, your student's being denied that free and appropriate public education, FAPE, that's going to be something that the Texas Education Agency is tasked with investigating. I know it's really broad and kind of vague. I'll talk with you all a little bit more about the specifics and the things that the TEA does investigate. So hang in there with me, we'll get there. But these are kind of the questions you should ask yourself if you're gearing up to write a complaint. Alrighty, level 3, due process hearings. I kind of refer to due process hearings as the nuclear option, right? This truly should be your last resort. And the reason that I say that is because due process hearings are very much like court hearings. You know, you have the 2 parties, usually the parent and the district. You're appearing in front of an impartial hearing officer, which is very much like a judge. And there are even certain rules that apply that have a basis in court hearings, like rules of evidence, things like that. It's a really, really complicated process. And I want to tell y'all that historically, schools win these things. Schools win the majority of due process hearings, and that's because they have the resources, they have the attorneys, they have the time, they have the money, things like that. These are hard. So deciding to file for a due process hearing, do that really carefully. Consider the other sort of remedies that are available to you. And really be serious about it if you're going to file for a due process hearing. So now that I've given you all of my sort of red flags, let's talk a little bit about how to request one of these hearings. You're going to file notice with both the Texas Education Agency and the district. Like everything else, the TEA has an online form that you can use. Fill that out, send it off to the agency, and then also send a copy of it off to the district. You have officially requested a due process hearing. This is kind of new, the 2-year kind of time frame to file. It used to be that you only had 1 year, like TEA complaints. This is a pretty recent change. They doubled that to 2 years. So that was a bit of a win for us, having a little bit more time to file those. Now, I've included some kind of timelines here that you may that you should expect to kind of happen if you're going to go forward with a due process hearing. Keep in mind that these are kind of squishy, right? Things could change based on the availability of the parties or even the hearing officer. These are kind of how the timelines are written out, right? But keep in mind that things are going to change. And you're probably going to get something called a scheduling order when you go ahead and file for due process. And that'll give you a much better idea of the timelines that you're looking at. What I want you to take away from this is that at some point, you're going to attend a resolution session. And this is kind of the last hurrah, the last kind of chance to see if we can't figure something out outside of the actual due process hearing itself. You and the district, parents in the district are going to be meeting, trying to figure it out one last time. Really, really important, parents. The district cannot bring an attorney to the resolution session unless you do. You either both have attorneys or there aren't attorneys involved at all. The purpose of the resolution session is to not sort of bully anybody into settling last minute, right? So that's kind of the thought of that behind that rule. And then the decision is going to be due 45 days after that resolution session. Keep in mind things can change, and just keep a hold of that scheduling order. That's going to give you all the dates that you want and need. So we've talked about all of the basics. We've talked about the 3 levels. Let's go ahead and zoom back in on TEA complaints and talk about how do you prepare, how do you write one, all of that good stuff. So I think it's important that there is a little bit of preparation that goes into filing a complaint with the Texas Education Agency. So here are kind of your first steps. Make sure that what you've got going on is something that the Texas Education Agency investigates, right? Here are a couple of examples of the things that the TEA does investigate. It's going to be things like ARD procedures. So did you get that notice at least 5 school days before the ARD meeting? For parents who are maybe Spanish speaking, was there an interpreter? Are documents being translated? Things like that are going to be ARD procedures and things that the agency does investigate. Evaluations and the failure to evaluate. If a district refuses to do an evaluation, or they do the evaluation, but they didn't do a very good job, or your student might have a disability and you've requested an evaluation and they just haven't evaluated your student. Those are all things that the agency investigates as well. IEP implementation, we've already talked about that a little bit. It's something that is written down in your student's plan, but it's not happening, or it's not happening the way it's supposed to be happening. And then, of course, discipline issues, restraints, making sure we're following the right procedures with restraints, making sure that we're documenting those things. Of course, timeouts, seclusions. If your student's placement is being changed, are we following the right procedures? Those all fall under the TEA's investigation umbrella as well. So just kind of make sure that you're headed in the right direction when you're thinking about filing a complaint with the TEA. Schedule an ARD meeting. This is going to be the last thing you want to do when you're ready to file a complaint, but it's a good thing because one of 2 things are going to happen. One, y'all are going to agree magically and then you don't have a reason to file a complaint anymore. It could happen, right? You figure it out in that one last ARD meeting and you're back on your way, you're back on your path. Or this other thing's going to happen. You're creating that paper trail. You're getting it on paper that you have this issue, this concern. You have disagreed, there's a disagreement on this thing, and now you have it on paper. So you now have something that you can take to the TEA and show them, hey, this is exactly what's going on, right? So it's a good thing to try and have that one last ARD meeting before you pull the trigger and file that complaint. That kind of goes right into gathering evidence, right? You might decide that you need, I need to get some emails together. You know, we had this conversation about this thing that's relevant. Or maybe you don't have a copy of the IEP, you know, you might have to request a copy of that. Start kind of getting together all of that important documentation that you think an investigator might want to see, right? And then remember, I've said it a million times, but you have a year. So just keep in mind the date of the bad thing happening and where you're at right now. You've got that 1 year time frame. Okay, we've talked about how to prepare. How do we write? How do we write a TEA complaint? This can feel a little daunting, doesn't have to be. Now, we've already talked about this as well. It has to be in writing. So either pull out your notebook paper or open up your blank Word document. Has to be typed or written. Now you have two options. The TEA, like everything else, they have an online form for TEA complaints. If that's the option that you decide to use, make sure you're filling out all those fields. You're including as much information as you think is important, and you're signing it at the end. The form has a place where you can sign. Make sure that you're doing that. Now, if you decide that you want to start from scratch, here are a few of the things that you should include in your complaint. Complaint and investigation. These are in quotes because I want you to put those words somewhere in your complaint. It tells the agency exactly your purpose in writing to them. This is a complaint. And it also tells the agency what you want them to do about it. You want them to investigate. So including those two words in your complaint somewhere is going to give the TEA those little nuggets of information, right? Of course, include information about your student. That's going to be things like their name, their age, the campus that they attend, the district that the campus is in, and then information about their disabilities or their eligibilities, the basics about your kiddo. Specific facts. Now, when I say specific, I mean things like dates, if you have them, names of people that you've talked to. You know, be specific about what your student is supposed to be getting, exactly what has gone wrong, when it went wrong. Now, I understand that some of these things might have happened 10 months ago, so you don't have to have everything kind of, you know, rock solid. You don't have to have every single date timestamp, but just as specific as you can be. That's going to help the investigator figure out where are they looking, right? Important documents. This is why I stress the importance of creating that paper trail. If you have been asking for copies, keeping copies, making sure everything is in writing, you're probably going to have a drawer or a stack of papers on your dining room table, and those are the important documents. Those are going to be the documents that sort of show the investigator, this is exactly what has happened. It's written down here, it's written down here. Those are going to be your important documents. So that might be things like, of course, your student's IEP or evaluations, emails, things like that. This next one is something that I think doesn't get talked about quite enough. The suggested resolution. What do you want to ask the agency to order the district to do that would fix the issue, that would fix what's going on? We'll talk a little bit more about what the TEA has the ability to order a district to do, but just remember that, right, you're trying to guide the investigator through your complaint, what has gone wrong and how we fix it. So it's a really important element. Don't forget that. And of course, another easy thing, but I'm here to remind y'all, your contact information, your name, your phone number, your email address, where you receive mail at. You don't want to contact the TEA, then them have no way to get a hold of you. So include your contact information. Okay, so that was a lot of information, a lot of elements, a lot of things to try and squeeze into a complaint. I wanted to give you all an example of what all of those elements working together might look like. Keep in mind that this is a very simple example. Your complaint might look longer or a little more complicated than this, so keep that in mind. I'm going to read this out to y'all, and then we'll sort of break it down into all of its elements. You can see how I have incorporated all those things that we just talked about. I want to request a TEA investigation into the following complaint. I am the parent of Mickey Mouse. Mickey is 9 years old and attends Goofy Elementary School in Disney ISD. Mickey has autism. According to Mickey's IEP, enclosed, Mickey is supposed to receive 2 hours of speech therapy a week. However, he has only received 1 hour a week, according to the district's documentation, enclosed. I request that the TEA order Disney ISD to provide compensatory services to Mickey because of the district's failure to implement his IEP. So let's break that down a little bit. Let's start with that very first line, the first sentence. We have both of those key words. We have investigation and we have complaint. So right off the bat, we have told the TEA why I'm writing. This is a complaint. We've also told the TEA what we want them to do about it. We want an investigation. Moving on to that kind of second paragraph, we've got all the basics about our kiddo. We've got their name, we've got their age, we have the campus that they attend, the district, and we have Mickey's diagnosis. Moving on to that third paragraph, this is going to be our specific facts. These aren't very specific. Yours are probably going to want to be a little bit more specific. But you'll notice that we've been specific about how much speech therapy Mickey's supposed to be getting and how often, 2 hours a week. And we've been, and we've been specific about how much he is receiving, which is only 1 hour a week. We have also included, you can't see any of those documents here, but we've tipped the investigator off that we have attached some of those important documents. If our issue is IEP implementation, we're going to want to include the IEP. That's going to be an important document. If our student's not getting what he's supposed to be getting and that's written down somewhere, that's another important document that we're going to want to attach to our complaint. And then moving on to that very last paragraph, we have suggested a resolution, and that's going to be compensatory services. And we'll talk about what that means soon, so hang in there with me. But we've suggested a solution, something that will fix the issue. And I wanted to point out that we included the phrase failure to implement his IEP. We have tipped off the investigator that this is an issue that the agency does in fact investigate. And this is the specific issue that we want to be investigated. Now, I don't want you to get too bogged down in that. You might not know off the top of your head kind of what umbrella your issue falls under, and that is okay. However, you can sort of flag an issue to the investigator in your complaint works. But I wanted y'all to notice that we are helping the investigator along, right? Okay, so we've prepped for a TEA complaint, we've written it, it's sitting on our desk. What do we do now? So this is how to file a TEA complaint. Sign it, sign it, sign it. No matter what, sign it. Believe it or not, the agency will throw out a complaint that does not have a signature on it. So whether you are starting from scratch or whether you decided to use the agency's online form, sign it. Super important. You can email, mail, or fax your complaint to the agency. I've included all of the information here that you would need in order to do any of those things. So I've included the agency's email address, their mailing address, and their fax number. This is another kind of important nuance that I think maybe doesn't get talked about enough. You are required to send a copy of the complaint to the district. So once you send it off to the TEA, go ahead and send it off to the district. And in fact, I'm lying to you a little bit. Send it to the district first and then to the TEA, because you're going to want to tell the TEA, this has been sent to the district. I sent it to this person at the district via email or via mail or via fax. That way you're telling the investigator, I have checked all my boxes. Everything that you asked me to do in this process is done. So something to keep in mind. Okay, so we wrote a TEA complaint, we sent it off, and now what happens? What should we expect after filing? Pretty soon after filing, you're going to get something called an acknowledgement letter that's going to be sent to you from the investigator who has been assigned to investigate your complaint. I want you to read this letter very carefully because it's going to tell you some really important things. The acknowledgement letter is going to list out the issues that the investigator is planning to investigate. So if it looks like maybe that investigator missed something, or they totally missed the mark and they're investigating something that you don't really think wasn't really the issue you were getting at your complaint, make sure that you let the investigator know that. Send a follow-up letter. Say, hi, investigator, I appreciate you getting back to me. I noticed that you listed this as an issue, but what I was really getting at was this other thing. Can we add that to the list of things to be investigated? So it's a little bit more than just, hey, we got your complaint, we're on it. It's important to read that carefully. So really be on the lookout for that acknowledgement letter pretty soon after you file. Again, the TEA has 60 days to investigate. What is actually happening during that time, right? We send it off and then we wait around. What is going on? What does it mean to investigate? The TEA has a duty to obtain and review any relevant information that will help them come to a decision. So if at some point you can't get a hold of a copy of something, or you can't really remember the date of something, that's okay. It is the TEA's responsibility to get a hold of whatever records they might need to make an accurate decision. So that's what's going on in those 60 days. After the investigation is completed, you're going to get that investigative report. There's kind of three important parts to this report. So let's talk about each of those three parts. You're going to get findings. Now, when you hear findings, I want you to think fact. The findings are what the investigator found when they dug into the records, started reviewing everything. Those are the facts that the investigator was able to establish, right? So those are going to be things like Mickey Mouse is a 9-year-old student who attends Goofy Elementary School in Disney ISD, right? Findings are just facts. Conclusions and reasons. This is when we're getting to kind of the important stuff, right? The conclusions are going to be what that investigator decided on as to each allegation or each issue that the investigator investigated. And of course, they're going to include their reasons. Some of that's going to be, kind of legalese, this is how we applied the law to the facts. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about substantiated versus unsubstantiated. If an allegation or an issue is substantiated, that means the investigator found enough there to say, yeah, this was an issue. This actually is going on. If an allegation or an issue is unsubstantiated, that means that the investigator got in there and said, there's not enough here. This allegation didn't happen the way that the complaint said that it did. So keep in mind, kind of look for those two words. Now, if you had a successful complaint, we found that some of those issues were substantiated. The last part of that report is going to be the required corrective actions. These are going to be the things that the TEA is ordering the district to do to correct what went wrong. So let's talk a little bit more specifically about corrective actions. So, like I said, a successful complaint is going to result in corrective actions. I've included a list here of a couple of the things that the agency can order a district to do. This is not an exhaustive list, but here are kind of some of the big things that we as an agency will ask for or we see granted. The first one, to perform or expedite an evaluation. If a district refused to perform an evaluation or they failed to do so, the TEA can order a district to go ahead and do that evaluation. And then with certain evaluations, there's kind of legal timeframes that things have to get done. The TEA can step in and say, that has to get done quicker than that. The TEA can also order a district to provide training to their staff. So let's say you have a kiddo that has ADHD. The TEA can order the district to train their staff on how to educate and work with students who have ADHD. We really like that one because it's a good way to create sort of campus level, district level change, right? To help other kiddos at that district who might be going through something similar. Compensatory services. The TEA can also order a district to provide compensatory services. I want to talk to y'all a little bit about this. Compensatory services, of course, are designed to make up for what was lost or missed because of the district's actions. It is not minute for minute. So let's say your student, and I keep going back to this example, but let's say your student was supposed to be getting speech services and they weren't. So let's say they've missed 500 minutes of speech services. If the TEA comes out and orders compensatory speech services, that does not necessarily mean that your student is going to get 500 minutes of those compensatory services. I also want you guys as parents to kind of keep in mind that compensatory services a lot of the times are happening during the school day. So that means that a kiddo might be missing out on art class or PE or whatever it might be in order to be getting these compensatory services. So there is a possibility that at some point compensatory services, yeah, we're getting a kiddo caught up on something, but at the expense of what? So ask yourself, at what point are we getting the maximum benefit from compensatory services? And that's why a lot of the time they aren't minute for minute. So I wanted to talk to y'all a little bit about those things. Okay, I feel like that breezed by. Hopefully y'all caught some of that. But if you didn't, here are some resources available to y'all that has a lot more information than what I had time to give y'all today. I won't go through every single one of these, but I did want to take just a second to talk about that top resource on the slide here, the IDEA manual that is available on Disability Rights Texas's website. I think it's also available on the ARC of Texas's website. Those two organizations co-authored the manual, and it's got a lot of great information and even more resources for parents. And it's got everything from that initial evaluation for special education services all the way to transition services and what to expect when your student is graduating. It's got a lot of really good information for parents. My nose is in it all the time. Sometimes I'll read it before bed, a little bit of light reading. So I truly cannot recommend it enough. It is super helpful. And of course, if you need something, if you have an issue going on, something that you need help with, self-advocacy is hard sometimes. Sometimes we need help with that. we provide that. So I wanted to just include our intake information, our intake lines. We also have an online intake, and we have some very accessible options out there for you as well. So that was a lot of information. I hope it was helpful. Thank you again so much for hanging out with me a little bit. I had a ton of fun. I love talking about this stuff, if that's not obvious. But yeah, I think we've got a little bit of time for questions. I'll answer everything to the best of my ability.
All right. Thank you so much, Tabitha, for explaining this complicated information in a way that we can understand. So thank you so much for that. We do have some questions. As a reminder, if you're on Zoom, please put your questions in the question and answer box so they don't get lost in the chat. And if you're joining us on Facebook, you can put them in the comments. So we do have some questions. So one, when you are filing a written complaint, can you quote IDEA?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you've kind of done some of your research, and you know that a particular action of your kiddo's district specifically violates a certain provision of that federal law or even state law, yeah, that kind of goes directly to helping your investigator along, right? Kind of giving them the footprints to step in as they go through their investigation. I would just say keep in mind that once you get that investigative report, you might find that the investigator is also pointing to maybe some other provisions. There might be some kind of overlap between federal and state laws, so you might see a different sort of citation than maybe what you have found or what you're used to seeing. But yeah, absolutely. And I love to see it.
Absolutely. So very similar question on that TEA complaint form. When it's asking for the Texas state law, is it required that you actually cite that? Are parents penalized if they don't?
Great question. You are not required to cite a specific statute, and you shouldn't be penalized if you don't. The kind of the purpose behind asking for that is, again, guiding your investigator, right? What is sort of the basis of what has gone wrong? Why are you complaining? Like, why are you bringing this complaint to us? Because, right, it violates this specific provision. And it might be at some point that you have just heard, okay, I know I'm legally entitled to this specific thing, or I know that my student's supposed to be getting this. But maybe you have no idea where in the law books or in the code that can be found. That's okay. Add whatever you know, right? I hope that kind of answers your question. That's a fantastic question.
Absolutely. So another really great question. Explain the difference between substantiated and unsubstantiated.
Okay, so these are both terms that might pop up, right? So this is going to be after you've filed that TEA complaint, after you've gotten that acknowledgement letter. Those words might be things that you see in the investigative report, right? Kind of the conclusions of the investigation. In that acknowledgement letter, you'll kind of have the issues that are going to be investigated listed out for you. It's going to be the same list in that investigative report. So you're going to see that issue, and then you're probably going to see those words substantiated or unsubstantiated. So if that particular issue is substantiated, that's the investigator telling you that yes, this allegation, this issue did occur. This is what was going on. And at that point, that's when you're going to want to go to the end of the report and see, okay, what kind of corrective actions are we getting? Unsubstantiated means that the investigator didn't find enough to find that issue really did happen the way that it was described in the complaint that the investigator is investigating. I think I took the long way to get there, but that's the difference. And maybe I'll put it in a little bit simpler terms. Substantiated, parents 1, unsubstantiated district one. And I hate to put it in a combative way, but kind of feels that way sometimes, right? When we file complaints. So maybe that's a better rule of thumb.
Absolutely. So great question from a parent. What can a parent do if the district completes an evaluation, but the parent does not agree with the district's findings?
That's great. Okay, so at that point, I'm about to talk to you about something that we didn't talk about today, but it might be another good remedy for you. You can request something called an independent education evaluation. That would be an evaluation that somebody who's not employed by the school district would do. Now, if you disagree with the evaluation that the district did, make sure you're getting that in writing, because that is a great point in time to request the district to pay for that independent evaluation for you. If you disagree with that evaluation, it's documented. The district will pay for one independent evaluation to be performed by somebody who's not employed by the school. Now, if at some point something goes awry, they're not following those processes, right? And they keep denying you, get it in writing, file that TEA complaint. That's a great basis for a TEA complaint.
Thank you. Another really great question. What can parents do if there's retaliation against their child or against them after a complaint has been filed?
That's kind of a hard question. Something that now, right, as a parent, at that point, if you have filed a complaint, that is you're taking advantage of your students' rights, right? Their special education rights. You are advocating for those rights. That might be a basis for an OCR complaint, right? Your student is now being treated differently for something that was done as a result because of your student's disability, right? So that might be something to consider. Now, if it's a specific sort of staff issue, right? There's somebody at your kid's district that is treating your student differently, that might be a local level grievance. That is kind of the one big dispute resolution method that we didn't talk about today in too much detail. Now, whoever you are out there, I don't know if you have some paper available to you, but Disability Rights Texas actually has kind of a handout on its website about how to find those local grievance policies for your district. If you look up Disability Rights Texas, local grievances, you'll find that page, and that handout will walk you through how to find those policies. Because I'll tell you that local grievance policies are buried. They're very hard to find. So there's resources out there that'll help you find those policies. That's going to be another kind of written complaint, but that'll actually go through the levels within your school district. So a lot of times you'll be talking to your campus's principal first. See if you can't figure out the issue with the campus principal. A lot of times then you're going to be talking to somebody at the superintendent's office. And it kind of differs, right? But there's different levels to local grievances, and it's different for every district. So make sure that you are checking those policies. There can also be certain really tight timeframes for filing those complaints. So if that's something that's going on, you notice is going on, get on that really quick. But a local grievance might be a really good way for you to get that taken care of.
Excellent. Thank you so much for answering those questions. We are going to go ahead and wrap up so we can get wrapped up on time. Tabitha, thank you so very much for this just fantastic information that you've shared with us and all the resources that I hope parents find very helpful in navigating this process. So we really do appreciate it. So as we're wrapping up, I am going to go ahead and share my screen again. Did you have any other slides or was that your last one?
No, yeah, that's good. I'm so sorry. There we go.
No.
Beautiful.
Let me go ahead and share my screen one more time as we're wrapping up. Once again, I want to thank everybody for joining us today and taking time out of your day to come and learn all of this information. As a reminder, a recording of the webinar will be available on our website at prntexas.org and on our Facebook page. And for those of you that need a certificate of attendance, you will be receiving an email to thank you for attending today's webinar. You can follow the link in the email to get your certificate of attendance. We do have some other fantastic webinars coming up over the next couple of months. So coming up on February 27th, also at 12:15, we have using Cadre resources to support your child's self-determination skill development with Kelly and Manny from Cadre. We also have coming up on March 5th, preparing for higher education. What do I need to start doing now? With Kelly Majewski and some others from West Texas A&M University. On April 9th, we have got Empowering Parents, Practical Sensory Supports for the Home with Andrea Webb for Regionton Education Service Center. And then we're going to wrap up our spring semester on May 7th with strategies and tips to avoid the summer slide with Michelle Simmons from West Texas A&M University. So be sure and register and check out those webinars as well. On the screen, I've got contact information for our Director of Statewide Services, Christina, our support specialist, Chelsea, and my contact information. Please check out our website at prntexas.org for information on upcoming webinars and events in your local regions, as well as a lot of information for you as parents. And like and follow us on Facebook and on Twitter at PRN Texas. Thank you again so much for being here. We really appreciate you taking time and hope you found this information useful. Tabitha, again, thank you. This was absolutely fantastic. So thank you for joining us so very much. And if you have questions, please reach out to us anytime. And thank you again. Bye.